Welcome to the Mama Village. In this podcast, mothers will share positive and unfiltered stories about pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and motherhood. I will also bring you interviews with experts such as lactation consultants, midwives, physios, doulas, and more. I want to help you feel informed so that you can make choices that support you and your family, because it takes a village to support a mother. I'm your host, Ellen. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Village. I'm your host Ellen, and today I have a truly inspiring story that I can't wait to share with you. In this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce Hannah, who joins us to recount her incredible journey to a magical home birth after two very different hospital birth experiences. Hannah's story is both heartfelt and enlightening. She'll take us through her experience of a traumatic hospital birth, which involved a cascade of interventions, and how this contrasts with the empowering hospital birth and then the home birth which followed. Diagnosed with gestational diabetes in each of her pregnancies, Hannah dove deep into research and self-advocacy to challenge this label, ensuring her home birth was as positive as she envisioned. We'll explore the significance of finding a midwife or healthcare practitioner who truly aligns with your values and the birth you dream of. Hannah also shares her profound insights on the power of supportive language during labour, revealing how her midwife's encouragement helped her through a big emotional release. Adding to the magic of her home birth, Hannah's other children were present, creating a deeply meaningful and family-centered experience. But her journey doesn't end there. We'll also dive into the realities of postpartum struggles and discuss the importance of preparing for a nourishing postpartum period. So join us as we delve into Hannah's story of transformation, empowerment, and the profound beauty of home birth. Don't forget that if you like the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. Now let's dive into Hannah's story. Welcome to the Mama Village, Hannah.
Hello.
I'm super excited to have you on here today, but do you want to start by telling the listeners a bit about yourself? So your age, who is in your family, and where you're from?
Sure. So I am 31. I have three beautiful children, Jack, Lenny, and Tommy. Jack is 4, Lenny is 3, and Tommy is about to turn 1. I live in Gympie currently with my husband and 3 kids, and I grew up in Ipswich, then moved to the Goldie, and now we have moved to Gympie about 2 years ago.
Ah, nice. And today we're going to talk about your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum with Tommy in particular. But throughout this as well, we might talk about the births of your other children and how your perception of birth has evolved in the lead up to Tommy's birth. And before we get to that point, let's start off with your pregnancy with Tommy. So do you want to talk about what you did to prepare to conceive with him?
Yeah, sure. So there wasn't really much thought, to be honest. We just wanted a bigger gap than Jack and Lenny. We were actually planning for the following year to have another baby, but he came a little bit earlier. So it was roughly around Christmas time for conception. And then I found out just after New Year's that I was pregnant with him. I kind of knew straight away that I was pregnant. So luckily, one of those women that just fall pregnant at the drop of a hat.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it is amazing. So yeah, very, very fertile. So yeah, preparing for the following year, but decided it was going to happen a little bit earlier. So yes.
Yeah, nice. And so how are you feeling physically and emotionally throughout your pregnancy with Tommy?
So I actually felt the best I have felt like with any of my pregnancies, because I had GD with Jack and Lenny, gestational diabetes. I went full keto.
Oh,
Tommy.
okay.
Yep. So I just heard that that was really good for diabetics, and I thought to myself, well, really, like all you're eating is really healthy food. Why is it an issue for a pregnant lady? So yeah, I went full keto pretty much as soon as I found out I was pregnant with him. I lost, I think it was by the end of it, 12 kilos whilst still having a happy, healthy baby. I just lost all that body fat that I was carrying around that I didn't need, obviously. And yeah, I was so energetic. I was very rarely tired. Of course, the first couple of weeks I was, but yeah, I just had so much energy to care for the other two as well. I worked full time whilst having the kids at home with me. Yeah, I didn't get any morning sickness. It was the easiest pregnancy I've had, that's for sure.
That's amazing, because I always hear about how with each pregnancy it gets harder and harder. So I love that you've had this beautiful pregnancy with Tommy. That's amazing.
yeah, it was really good.
So what was your perception of birth before you fell pregnant? You obviously had two other little ones. So do you want to go into a little bit of your background of your pregnancy and birth experiences with your other two children, and then how that perception of birth evolved with Tommy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Marcus and I found out I was pregnant with Jack. I think we were, we'd be 26, 27-ish. So we were in our sort of like party days back then. That was a bit of a rude shock for me personally. I was very upset. Probably not upset. That's probably the wrong word, but I was just like, holy moly, this is happening. My husband was super, super excited when, we found out we were pregnant with Jack. His whole pregnancy was filled with like sort of being scared, but also being super, super excited because you're about to experience this thing that, you've never experienced before. You haven't really had much like involvement with pregnancies or around much people that have been pregnant. So yeah, for me, it was sort of like a game changer. A lot of my things in life is to change what I needed when I was little. So that for me, I was really excited because I was like, this is my journey. Like, this is where I'm going to start that. And then I was in the MGP program with both Lenny and Jack, which is where you get a midwife assigned to you and you have the same midwife the entire time and you get to birth with them. Unfortunately with Jack I didn't get to birth with, the start of his birth was very traumatic. I was with a different midwife. It was just like I was in the system. So that was a bit disappointing for me. I pretty much had every intervention you could have had except for a C-section. Then my actual midwife decided she would come when I was 7 centimeters dilated. Then they gave me the epidural. Then I literally started pushing when I laid back down from having the epidural. So poor Jack got a full dose of the epidural as well as myself. And yeah, I had a episiotomy to try and get him out as well. So yeah, that for me, looking back, was quite traumatic because I know there was so many different things that didn't need to happen, but they did. But, I just think it is what it is. He was here, he was safe, he was healthy. I was safe, I was healthy, but I would never wish that upon anyone else. And then Lenny was sort of even more of an eye-opening for me. We were thinking we were going to have all boys. So her being a girl was like a bit, I think, stressful for me because I put so much pressure on myself having a girl because I've always been like sort of a boy's girl. But when she was here, so her pregnancy, I just sort of I wasn't as strict with the gestational diabetes guidelines because I didn't agree with most of them. I still did the testing. I still did all of that other stuff that they make you do. I went through the MGP. I actually had a really, really good midwife and she was there start to finish of my induction. That I had no interventions at all. Probably the only thing they did were checks, like cervical check. I went into the shower and a couple hours later she was born on the shower floor. So
Wow.
it was like one extreme to another really. And that for me was super empowering. I had this beautiful little girl in my arms that, I was fully moving and could stand up and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just sort of like made me hungry for more change.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So when you went into your birth with Lenny,
Yeah.
did you envision how your birth would unfold? Like, did you want to avoid the epidural the second time around?
Yes, I think I was really, really determined that I wasn't going to have the epidural. Even with Jack, I sort of was, but doing it once, I think the second time you kind of know what you're capable of more. And yeah, I was pretty determined to not have absolutely anything or anyone near me or touching me or just as little people in my bubble as I could.
Yeah. And you mentioned an induction as well. So was the induction suggested to you because of the gestational diabetes diagnosis?
Yes, it was. Yeah, sorry, I left that out for Jack as well. So I pushed them out to 40 and 4 for Lenny. She was 40 and 4. But yeah, it was because of the gestational diabetes, the big baby, the low blood sugar, all that kind of stuff they like to scare you with.
Yeah, okay. And so then when it came time to your pregnancy with Tommy, what was your perception of birth at that point in time?
So I think my perception changed completely. I just sort of understood more of sort of what's the word I'm trying to look for? Like, I think I got
Physiological birth? Or?
yeah, and back then I had no idea what that even meant. You know, they don't teach you that in school. You just like they don't really teach you anything about birth in school. So you just sort of go off relatives and like what your mum tells you, really. And for me, I just was like, that's not right. I just thought back in the day, you know, that's my thought. Everything I thought of was back in the day, they didn't have this, they didn't know this. If something happened during childbirth, that's when the doctor came. It wasn't like, you know, you go into a hospital when you're sick and you need to be fixed. Like, you don't go into hospital to, you know, have this beautiful little baby. So I think going into that pregnancy, I was just like, I'm just going to have that mentality. Like, what happened back in the day? None of that
Yeah.
happened. So I'll be right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we wouldn't survive as a species if
Yeah.
every single birth was a medical emergency, right? Like
Yeah,
it's rare.
exactly. Yep, it's so, so rare. And just the stories you hear and all of that, they were all from hospital births, you know? Like, I'm sure it happens, but I've not heard one story of a home birth that's gone wrong, you know, or something happened in the home birth that caused something to go wrong, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think with home births too, the midwives are so prepared for medical emergencies and they don't hesitate to call an ambulance if you need or for a hospital transfer or whatever it might be. And with all the interviews that I've done in the past, I'd say most, if not all, women who have required a hospital transfer still see their birth as extremely positive because they've been
Yep.
in charge of the decisions, they've been
Yep.
involved in the whole process, and they've been informed, and it's still been a positive. None of their power has been taken away. They've still
Yep.
been respected as a human being. So, which is the
Exactly. Yeah.
bare minimum, right?
Yeah, right.
Like,
We're like these big, beautiful, powerful creatures, and as soon as we hit birth, which is the most amazing thing we are capable of, it's like we're just nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So then what was your model of care?
So with Tommy, I hired the beautiful midwife Sal. She is actually a Sunshine Coast local, so she's located in Yandina. And I actually was going to go with a different midwife purely because she was local to Gympie. But midwife Sal's picture kept popping up on the internet, and I just thought, just really something about this lady, and I need to talk to her. So I was actually going with the other midwife, and I went against my gut feeling and got tested for GD, which came up positive. And then the other midwife said, oh, well, maybe we might have to look at birthing in a hospital. And I went, yeah, you're not the midwife for me. So I contacted, midwife Sal, and we met, and it was just, she was the one the whole time. I just took a little while to find her. So I got looked after midwife Sal, and then I also had as a secondary midwife Tamron, who's out in Glastonbury, and she was just amazing. I couldn't fault either of them.
And how amazing is that, right? Like, as soon as you got that gestational diabetes diagnosis, you didn't say, oh, okay, well, I'll have to go to the hospital then. Like, you really took hold of your own power. You were in charge of the decisions, and you were like, well, no, that you're not the right person for me. And you can do that. You can find a different provider that works for you. And I highly, highly encourage that, so that you, in your birth space, you have a team around you that aligns with your values and how you envision your birth.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that was my main thing. I just didn't want to feel that sort of like ick feeling inside me about anything. And that I was like, nope, not happening.
Yeah, good on you. And what did midwife Sal say about your GDM diagnosis? Like, did she give any advice on that? Or, yeah, talk us through that.
Okay, so one thing I really love about Sal is you ask her the question, she tells you what the guidelines are, and then she provides you with the evidence that challenges the guidelines. So for me, that was one thing I wasn't very good at, is trying to find stuff that goes against what guidelines, tell you to do. Midwife Sal had it all. So everything she sent the guidelines, then she also sent all these other resources that she had that were, had the research behind them, had the statistics, had, everything that I needed to know in my head there written on the paper. She also put me onto podcasts, books, just heaps of different resources that I could myself then go and look at and research things myself. So she didn't say that I shouldn't do anything, which I really liked as well. She left me in charge of that. She didn't really have much experience caring for ladies with gestational diabetes, and she told me that. She made me well aware. So she ensured that I was in charge of all of it and I did what I wanted to do, and she would support me either way. I decided, whichever way I decided to go. So she was awesome.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so nice to hear of practitioners that are willing to support your choices no matter what, which again, it's how it should be. That choice should never be taken away from you.
Yeah.
It should always be the woman's choice. So I love that you've really found a woman-centered midwife.
Yes, yeah, she 100% is, yeah.
So what motivated your decision to have a home birth, especially after going through the MGP program twice? Did you hear about it through some of the research that you did? How did that come about?
So for me, my cousin has a best friend who I just admire so much, and she is home birthing. She's, she cooks home meals. She's just such an admirable person for me. And she'd had 2 home births, and I was like, oh, I can do this. I can so do it. And then we actually moved to a farm where I was even more like, I need to be with this land. I have to birth on my own. And I was questioning what in birth could go wrong because I have gestational diabetes. My blood sugar should not be that much of a problem for someone who's giving birth. How is that interrupting my birth canal and a baby coming out, And no one could answer my question. So I just said to myself, well, really, I'm no more of a risk than a normal pregnancy. And yeah, I really just stuck to my guns, and I was like to my husband, this is a home birth. And he was like, okay, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
Let's do it.
So he didn't have any fear around that he had to
No,
process?
nothing at all. No, he's always sort of trusted me and whatever instinct I have to follow it. So yeah, he was totally on board. He was like, all right, let's look at midwives. Let's just get prepared. So yeah, we were sort of our birth on the land that we've bought, and yeah, so we were on a mission then.
Oh, that's amazing. And did you have any fear about home birth at all?
I didn't. For me, I think the biggest fear was my birth space being interrupted. Just a lot of, I guess, the previous generations, you always had people in the room or there at the hospital with you. And I'd always said that I just want Marcus, who's my husband. I just need him and I just want him. And I just had this fear that someone would be there that I didn't want to be there, and my space would get interrupted and I would just lose the plot pretty much. But that's really the only thing that I had concern about. Nothing medically, nothing about the whole birth itself, just the space I was in.
Yeah, okay. And so how did you prepare for your home birth? You did mention that your midwife sent you a couple of resources, but are there any podcast, books or communities that you found really helped you prepare?
Yeah, so my biggest help, I think, and still to this day I'm obsessed with it, is the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. Everyone probably knows about it now.
Yeah,
but for
totally.
me, yeah, it's one of the best. For me, with the gestational diabetes, even just listening to that first podcast, I was fist pumping in the air, yes, this is all I'm talking about. I'm so glad someone who is, a medical professional is actually talking about it as well and has our back.
Yeah.
Another good one was the Midwife's Cauldron. I do like that one as well, with Rachel Reed as a special guest. Heaps of the episodes with her are really informative. I did read also Lily Nichols' book, Real Food for Pregnancy. I read that as well, which absolutely changed my life with my eating and keeping my blood sugar levels down. That was incredible. I also joined all of the home birth pages on Facebook. So Home Birth Australia, Home Birth Queensland. There's even a Gympie one as well. So they were all helpful when I had a question that I didn't necessarily want to bug Sally with. Yeah, so the podcasts were game changers for me. I've never listened to a podcast in my life, and now I'm obsessed.
Oh, The Great Birth Rebellion is a brilliant one, and so is The Midwife's Cauldron, actually. And both of them have some amazing episodes on gestational diabetes and big babies and what that could mean, and ultrasounds in pregnancy and getting that big baby diagnosis or scare
Yeah.
tactic or whatever you want to call it. There's just so much information in those episodes, and what to do when you receive a diagnosis like that. So
Yes.
I'll link all of those resources in the show notes. They're great recommendations.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So moving into your birth then with Tommy, so how are you feeling towards the end of your pregnancy with, labour looming, I suppose?
I think I was really scared, to be honest. I think I let the fear get the better of me in a way because I'd had two induced births. I thought to myself, like, what if my body actually doesn't know what to do? And then I had to sort of like talk myself out of that. Well, it doesn't really have a choice. Like, this baby is coming out one way or another. But I think I definitely doubted my ability to go into labour by myself because I was 41 and 4. So I was getting on and I just thought, oh my gosh, maybe I can't do it by myself. And then you also go into the chats with the midwife about, how far over you willing to go. And I'm like, I don't know because I've never done this before. So yeah, I think that doubt inside my mind really took over a little bit. But I was also just trying to take each day as it came. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. I stopped work pretty early, so just enjoyed those last moments I had with the two older kids while I could. But just that fear of my body not being able to do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me. Yeah.
And given, like you said, your inductions, I can see it and understand totally where that fear is coming from. And, I'm sure whilst you had all this evidence-based information now in your toolkit about gestational diabetes, perhaps as well just past trauma and with your previous births and that diagnosis would have just added to that layer of fear, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, leading up to the end of your pregnancy.
Yeah.
So how many weeks were you when labour started and you felt those, initial niggles or contractions or surges? And can you walk us through your birth story?
Yeah, sure. This is actually the first time I've properly told my story, so I'm very excited.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, good. So I started getting contractions probably 3 or 4 days earlier. There were a couple of times where I thought, oh, I think this is it. And then nothing happened. I lost quite a lot of my mucus plug during the night, but it was quite red. So I was a bit worried about that. And I woke Sally and I was like, is this normal? And she was like, totally normal. You can go to the hospital if you want, but it's up to you. So I just stuck to my gut and I trusted my instincts. And then the day before I went into labour, I was actually having contractions quite regularly. And I had planned for my sister to come and look after my two older children while I was birthing, so my husband could be present with me. We went through the Red Rooster drive-through actually, and I remember holding on to the brake and going, oh, that was intense. So I called my sister and I was like, I think you better coming from Brisbane. So I said, I think it's time. So she made her way to our house, and then by the time she got there, it all just stopped. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, it's not happening. I think I'm good. Then the next morning at 7 o'clock, it was time to go. Like, it was consistent every 3 minutes, not 3 minutes, 1 minute. So yeah, it was happening. Midwife Sal was like, I keep calling her Midwife Sal. Sally was like, well, how about I just come and I'll set up all my stuff and, we'll just get everything ready to go. If I go home, I go home. I'm like, okay, yep, that's cool. Let's do that. And then she sent me a message saying Tamron was coming as well. And I was like, oh my God, it is happening, isn't it? Like, this is it. I'm in labour.
And how many weeks were you?
I was 41 and 4.
Yep, okay.
So I was, a little bit toasted. Yeah, so as soon as Tamron, I could hear her voice, I sort of had a massive release and I just bawled my eyes out because I was like, wow, I'm actually doing it. Like, this is me doing what I need to do and it's about to happen. And then when Sally got here, I was even more distraught. I was bawling my eyes out, had the head under the blanket and everything. And she just said to me, you know what? That's awesome. That's really good. A really good release when you're about to go on this journey. And I was like, I love you. Like, that's exactly what I needed to hear.
It's making me teary.
Yeah, it was just like it was just like she was in tune. Whatever I needed to hear, she had just told me. Like, and it was just a miracle for me that I'd even got that far. I was just like, wow, okay, this is happening. I've got my cheer squad. Let's do this. So my mum sneakily came and took the older two kids, and I went into labour. I didn't eat or drink. Oh, actually, I've left out the biggest part. I had gastro the night before. So
You didn't.
I did. Oh my God, how did I forget that? So I had gastro really bad the night before. I was up vomiting for most of the night.
That's
Oh my gosh.
horrendous.
So bad. So I had no food in my tummy. I had minimal water. They were trying to give me bananas and toast and I just couldn't do it. So I was running on nothing. Can't believe I forgot that. Silly. So we had a mattress on the floor next to the birthing pool and I was labouring there for quite a while. I'd like to move. I've got to move. So then I got into the shower with my ball and I was in there for quite a while and I said, I think I want to get in the pool. So they were already filling up the pool, which was awesome. And then as soon as I got into the pool, I was like, oh, this is heaven. Like, I totally understood why people want to birth in water because it was just like glorious. But I kept moving. I kept swaying, moving my hips. I felt a bit like Shakira doing Hips Don't Lie music and moving my hips a little bit. We had the music playing. Yeah, it was just really good. And then the surges sort of started to feel a bit more intense and I had a bit more pressure. So I was like, I think it's time to get the bigger kids back. I was in the water for quite a while and I was getting so tired because obviously I was running on nothing and I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm so done with this. I just want my kids and I'm tired and why is he not here yet? And I think I was only going on. It was probably like 7 hours-ish. And I just remember looking at my husband, just bawling my eyes out going, why is he not here yet? I thought labour was meant to get shorter. Each child. And again, Sal and Tamara were there and they're like, you're doing so good. Like, you're doing really, really well. Like, this is nothing. You're just making it look easy. You know, every contraction, you're just breathing through it. You're a powerhouse. You're doing fine. Soon enough, you'll be looking down and being like, oh, he's here. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay, I'm good. So I got out of the bath because it got a bit too hot for me. So I started to get a bit of anxiety, which I usually do when things are a bit too hot. So I got out, got back in the shower and I was like, I just felt this drop and I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's going to happen a bit sooner than what I think it's going to happen. So everyone's got the towels ready to catch the baby. And I'm like, no, I don't think we're that far yet, guys. So I stayed in the shower. I don't even know how long, but it was very short. And I said, I need to lay down. I just need to lay down. So I tried to make it to the bed as quickly as I could without having a contraction, but obviously that's a bit hard to do when they're coming so regularly. I think I laid down for maybe one contraction. I could be wrong, but then I was like, he's coming. He's 100% coming now. And I had my husband pinned up against the wall, holding me. And I said to them, I think he's stuck because I had this really severe pain in my hips. So I just felt like it just didn't feel right. So Tamron grabbed my hips and did the hip squeeze. And I think the next contraction, he was out. And they were all yelling at me like, are you going to catch him? Like, can you grab him? And I'm yelling at my husband going, catch him. And he said, I can't. You have my hands pinned against the wall. So no one caught him. The bed caught him. And yeah, I just remember reaching down and just pulling him straight up onto my chest. And I was just like, wow, I actually did that. And just it's like an out of body experience when you pull your baby up onto your chest all by yourself, no hands, like no one screaming at you. I was just like, wow, this is so angelic. It was, yeah, wow.
Oh, how beautiful. So how long was the labour in total from start to finish?
It was 9 hours. Probably, yeah, like 9.5, 9.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. And so did you, I don't think I asked you this. Did you know that it was a boy?
Yes, we did. We got one scan and we're very impatient. So we definitely found out.
Yeah. And were your older kids present for the birth in the end?
They were, yes, they were. So they came when I was actually in the bath and nearly getting out of the bath, and they had the torches and they were all like, Mummy's having a baby. So yeah, it was so nice. And my daughter wasn't really that fussed about it, but Jack was right up in there with the torch. And then as soon as I was laying on the bed, he was right beside me. Like there's this little creature on me. And yeah, it was really beautiful. I definitely don't regret having them there.
Oh, I could squeal. I love hearing stories where the older siblings are present because it just is such an imprint in their memory. Like they will
Yeah.
never ever forget this, and this will go on into their adulthood. If they decide to have children one day, they're always going to remember witnessing their sibling being born at home.
Yeah.
Oh,
The way it's
so
meant to be,
beautiful.
right? It was so nice. Yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And how was your husband in that moment?
I think he was more concerned about me. Like he was like, "Quick, sit down. Are you okay?" Like sort of thing. But yeah, he's always like crouched down beside me when I've just done it with the little hand around me. So yeah, very excited. It was like he hit cloud nine before I did. So yeah, that's always good to see and feel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And then how was the birth of your placenta?
So it was actually pretty easy. I don't remember birthing the placenta with Jack and Lenny, obviously because you're like laying down and they don't want you to move. But I actually fed for 2.5 hours after birth. I tried to do the 3 hours, but he was just super full. So yeah, I think it was 2.5 hours. And Sal said, "How about we get up and we try birth your placenta?" So I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up just doing it on the edge of a stool into a bowl. And yeah, it wasn't like it didn't hurt. It wasn't anything scary like they make it out to be. I didn't have to tug, like it was just one big push and it was out. So, and just even that feeling was angelic in a way. Like I did have a little cry when I birthed it because it's such a, amazing, beautiful thing. And it's sort of like the end of it as well, the end of the birth process for you. So yeah, I did have a little tear when I birthed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice, and I did it by myself. No one was there because it just happened really quickly, and Sal walked out and walked back in, and it was out. So yeah, it was good.
That's amazing. And did you do anything special with your placenta?
Yes, I encapsulated it. So I encapsulated with all 3 kids. As soon as they say it may reduce the risk of postnatal depression, I was all over that because my mum suffered really, really bad with it. So that's one thing that I wanted to ensure I would try my best at not doing, or not getting. I should say doing. Yeah, so placenta vitality. Natalie here is really nice. She actually picked it up that night and got it back the next day. So yeah, definitely recommend
Amazing.
it.
Yeah, I did placenta encapsulation after my second birth
Yeah.
and cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah, it's insane, and I've never not had it. So like even my husband was taking them as well because just on those days where you're just down in the dumps, you just might need a little bit of a pickup, and it definitely works. Definitely works.
Yeah, nice. And did you have any tearing or anything like that?
Nothing. Absolutely. Oh, I think I had a tiny little graze, and Tommy was 4 kilos. So, yeah, he was 4 kilos. I had obviously the episiotomy with Jack. He was the smallest. And then Lenny, I had a tiny little tear. And then at home, 4 kilo baby, a tiny little graze. and I just treated it with Manuka honey, and that's it.
Love that. And doesn't
Yeah.
that just go to show, like, you had the diagnosis of gestational diabetes.
Yep.
He was on the bigger side, and
Yeah.
no tearing, like,
Nothing.
amazing.
Yeah, it was great. And yeah, it definitely just goes to show you, right, that you can do
Totally.
it. That's what your body's made for.
And did you do anything to prepare for postpartum?
Nothing. I was really slack. I was like, this is the third baby. I'm good. I was not good. It was like, yeah, I seeing what I can offer now to people going through postpartum. It's definitely something that you need to invest in, as well as a really good midwife. I really wish that I invested in something like a doula, even to just do postnatal snacks or meals, or, like I think I put a lot of pressure on Marcus with all the meals and things like that, because we were just like, we can do this. We've got 2 other kids. We're good. But yeah, we weren't good for a while. I think I've seen how much greener it is on the other side. Having that support, I do wish that I prepared a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. And so then how was your physical recovery as well?
So the day after was very, very hard. Marcus got the gastro the night of the birth. So so he was out
No.
of action for the next day, and we had no one. So we had no support that day. I'd just given birth. We had the 2 kids. He had gastro. My sister had to go back to work. So that physically and mentally was really, really hard. I felt like you do after every birth, you've just run a marathon or you've just done a really hard workout at the gym. But within 3 days, physically, I was good. And then I think I was just on cloud 9 for days and weeks after, because I'd achieved something so spectacular. Mentally, I was good. I was strong. And I had, obviously, the support of Marcus and others around me that, picked me up, and the placenta tablets as well, which also benefited. Yeah, so I was good.
Yeah, okay. And then how was your overall postpartum experience once you navigated sort of those initial challenges?
So I think overall I was pretty good. Tommy was by far a lot needier than the other 2 were as babies. He was a koala, so still is a koala. He's a mama's boy. So the carrier for me was a godsend, because I could just hold him on me. He was happy. Lenny didn't adjust very well after Tommy was born. She cried for probably the first week, because she's used to being the baby and she was used to having all of the attention. We've sort of worked through it now. He's 1. They get along really well. There's just times that she's not okay with it. But I think that was the biggest challenge for me, was Lenny just crying and crying, because she was so upset. But I was out and about, I think it was 6 weeks postpartum with the 3, and that's when I really sort of, I think, discovered what journey I was meant to take. Like, this was just the start, and I appreciate everyone that was there for me with that experience, because now I'm, I guess, a home birth advocate, and I love educating women on going down the home birthing route, like play groups, group meetups, all that kind of stuff, which I never ever would have done previously ever. So yeah, I think the postpartum was super empowering. The birth was, but I think after, when I really discovered what I was meant to do, was even more empowering than the actual birth.
It's such a transformative experience, isn't
Yeah,
it?
really is. It really, really is.
Yeah. And I feel like I can really relate to you with the sibling adjustments as well. And I'm sure some of the listeners have heard my birth story too, but my eldest really struggled with the adjustment with my youngest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was an age thing, or sometimes it's just personality, or like you said, they've gone from being the absolute center of attention. I mean, my son was the first grandchild on my mum's side, and so he was getting a lot of love, a lot of attention. And then, then mummy was all of a sudden very occupied with the baby, and so he took it really hard. And similar to you, it wasn't until my youngest reached about 1 that they started to play and engage with each other a bit more. And he still has his moments.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, they're exactly the same then.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just like being the it child, and then when that's taken away, it's kind of like, what? no.
Yeah, and it's so nice to hear other people going through a similar experience and just sharing stories as well, because I found when I was going through it, at least, everyone I spoke to, no one could really relate. No one had really been
Yeah.
down that path before with that really strong like jealousy of the other sibling. And so it was also new to me, and I kept thinking, what am I doing wrong? I don't
Yeah.
understand. So I don't know what it was like for you, but that's what it was like for me. And so I think it's so nice to hear these stories and
Yeah.
share, because it is other women go through something similar. And
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's when they're crying and screaming and you've just spent like a whole half an hour just dedicating your whole entire time to them, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm so sorry. How can I help you? Like, why is what I'm doing not helping you?
yeah. And of course, like I would say this to everyone, is that you're doing everything right. Sometimes these things happen and
Yeah.
it's really hard in the moment, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It will get better and it will
Yeah.
get easier. And
Exactly.
yeah, one day they'll be best mates.
Yeah. Yeah. They won't even know who you are. They're like, what, mum? I don't want anything to do with you. You'll be the one crying. Why doesn't anyone want me?
Oh, so looking back, what are some of the most cherished moments or aspects of your home birth experience?
I think the cherished moments for me were definitely understanding the power that women hold. For me, I'd always seeked comfort in men. Like, I always had guy friends. I was always the one with a boyfriend. I just surrounded myself by manly figures. But to have two incredible women cheering me on, and every time I felt like, oh my God, I cannot do this again, their little "you are doing so good," or "you're a power woman," or "you're amazing," was there. It was right there. They knew when to say it, they knew what to say. And I just think that is really cherishing for me, because I can be that for someone, you know, I can be that person. And I think with women and how we're raised is to go against one another, when really we need to be supporting each other, even if that person isn't your type of person. Like, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad person. It's just they're not your person. So I think that's one of the cherished things that I sort of discovered throughout the birth, even because I had, you know, Sally and Tamron cheering me on. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. I am a powerhouse. I am amazing. So I think that was one thing I really, really, really enjoyed, because I'd never had that before. It was always like, we're supposed to go against each other, I guess. And I think another thing was just learning to trust my body and my instincts and finding my inner power. I guess that's what it's shown me. So, are my two cherished moments.
I love that so
Yeah.
much. And to wrap things up, what advice do you have for other mothers considering a home birth based on your journey?
So I think to wrap up, I would say do research. You got to do your research. It is going to be expensive as well, is another thing. I think the more you research, the more you will feel more confident that this is the decision for you. Invest in what care you need and you want, and don't be scared to say things that you want. You know, like, you might be a woman that the way that you get held is hold my baby so I can do my washing, so I can wash up, so I can make myself lunch. Or you might be the woman that wants to hold her baby while that all happens for her. But I think just finding your voice, doing your research, and just question everything. Everything. If something doesn't sound right, it's probably not right, because you know you more than anyone else does. So don't let anyone question what you're feeling, because they don't know why you're feeling that. Only you do. So yeah, I think that would be my advice. Yeah, research, trusting yourself. You really have to trust yourself. This is your journey, no one else's.
Oh, I love that advice so much. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on the podcast. I've loved hearing your story. I
Thank
just want to
you.
pull apart all the details and live it all with you. I just loved that. And I love that you brought me to tears as well at some point. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Mama Village podcast. Check out the show notes for a link to the Mama Village Instagram page where I upload pregnancy, birth, postpartum and motherhood resources. Please let me know what you think of today's show and what you would like to hear from the podcast by leaving a rating and review. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform. If you would like to share your positive pregnancy, birth, postpartum and motherhood story, or if you have education in the space to share, please send me a direct message on Instagram or email the.mamavillage@outlook.com. For all my listeners out there, thank you for your continuing support and I will speak to you all in next week's episode.